This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Pursue Fitness. Privileged to be joined today by legendary broadcaster Michael Buffer, the sound of boxing, the voice of boxing rather. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good stuff. We're here today at the Whyte Rivas press conference here in London. Talk to me about the fight. Dillian Whyte in tough again against Oscar Rivas.
A very tough fight. I mean, the best nickname in boxing is when they say undefeated. And they both have, I think it's both have 28 fights. And he's got 28 wins with 18 KOs, or 26 fights, I think it is. And it's pretty impressive. A physical specimen, amazing, and he was brilliant in his last fight, Rivas, in Montreal. But Dillian, I mean, everybody's seen those pictures of him training and doing those handstands and barbells and all those things he does. He's very, very fit. So I think this is one of those fights where we don't need judges, just a good referee, and we're going to have a good fight.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about Dillian potentially, going back a few months now, obviously, fighting Anthony Joshua. There's been talk of him with Tyson Fury. He has now the position with the WBC, which would make him mandatory. He, again, is stepping into a fight that he, in some quarters, people would say he doesn't necessarily need to take in Oscar Rivas, a young, dangerous, undefeated fighter. What does that say about Dillian Whyte as a fighter?
That's what makes this fight not just interesting, but compelling. Here's a guy that's been ranked number one by the WBC for, I think, 2 years, and he has the silver belt, the international belt. He's ranked number one, and for some reason, they make the rules up as they go along. He just hasn't been the quote-unquote mandatory. He deserves to have that shot against Wilder based on their rankings, and here he's putting it all on the line. As the winner of this fight will be called the interim, another one of those titles, but the interim and mandatory champion to fight Wilder after he fights Fury, if that happens, which I think it will. So a lot of interesting stuff going on.
Now, you mentioned it there slightly tongue-in-cheek, another belt. One thing not related to this card in particular, when you talk to a lot of people outside of the sport, I spoke to Thomas Hauser about this very same thing. He said there's too many belts. There's too many belts in boxing, interim titles. We have franchise champions now. We have gold belts, silver belts.
We have franchise champion. Pretty soon maybe we'll have multiple franchise champions, but right now it's just one.
Just one at the minute, and we do stress that. But what do you make of that? Are there too many belts in boxing? Is that something that boxing needs to have a look at?
Absolutely. I mean, the greatest title in sports, in boxing, is undisputed. And a month ago, we had a chance that perhaps Demetrius Andrade, as the, I just lost my coffee there, Demetrius Andrade, as the WBO middleweight champion, and Canelo had all the other belts. If they fight, we would have an undisputed champion. But all of a sudden, it's been changed with this franchise title. So, for fans and promoters and everyone in between, writers and yourself, pundits, it's too many belts. There's no doubt about it. We have international belts, international silver belts, world titles, and 4 major commissions, and it's a little crazy. We just want to see them all fight each other and have an undisputed champion. I think that's the bottom line.
Now, you've been around in the sport for many, many years. Do you feel like it dilutes the sport, having these additional titles? I know it wasn't always that way, particularly with your kind of international, intercontinental ranking titles. Do you think it dilutes the sport?
Yeah, of course it dilutes the sport. You mentioned Tom Hauser, one of the best writers in the sport of boxing, and actually a brilliant writer about everything. And he's absolutely correct. There's just too many belts. You can't, as a fan, you can't keep track of it. And I just, for me, listen, I've been doing this for almost 4 decades, but I'm a fan, and I want to see these guys fight each other. I think right now we have a really good heavyweight division. The top half dozen guys all have the chance to beat each other, not just like have one guy, he's the best. Let's really have them fight each other and find out who is really the king of the hill.
Now, I haven't actually spoken to you since the Anthony Joshua-Andy Ruiz fight. Given the nature of that fight and what happened in that, you mentioned kind of a top 6 in the heavyweight division. Who would you currently say is the number 1 heavyweight in the world?
I'm sorry.
It is a very busy press conference. Who would you say is currently the number 1 heavyweight in the world?
I guess because of AJ losing, your top three definitely has to be Ruiz, Wilder, and Fury. To pick one, I find Ruiz very interesting in this mix because he's underrated and he showed he has great hand speed, a big chin, and obviously a fighting heart. The Parker fight, which was, I think, a split decision, is his only defeat. And a lot of people say, oh my gosh, look at his physicality, he's fat, he's blubber. There are guys that are 6'1" and weigh 300 plus pounds in the NFL that are great athletes. So, they're carrying a lot of bulk around with them. But they have skill and they have ability. And in Ruiz's, saying for him, he's quite an athlete, obviously, because he beat probably the guy that everyone recognized as the best heavyweight around. And I'm really looking forward to that rematch.
We'll come on to the rematch in a minute. As we mentioned, you've been around the sport. You've seen some shocking upsets over the years. Where did Joshua Ruiz rank for you?
Without being able to name the other two, it's definitely one of the three biggest upsets I've ever seen. It's just really shocking, really amazing. But one of the greatest trainers in the history of the sport, Angelo Dundee, once said, if a 200-pound woman hits you just right, you're going to go to sleep. And this is a case of a fighter like Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson. Wow, what an upset. This was a big upset, but it wasn't a fluke. I mean, we all saw the guy used skill, a great heart, and a big chin. He took some massive punches.
What do you make of that rematch, if and when it does happen?
I'm going to say it's a 50-50 fight. I mean, just my opinion of going in, based on the fact that people know that Ruiz can win. But with AJ, I think we have somebody who's very, very special. So, anything can happen in that fight. I want to see it.
As do I. We've mentioned Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury in this interview. If indeed they do have a rematch, potentially at the start of 2020, who do you make a favourite in that fight?
It's an interesting fight. Wilder has this devastating one-punch talent. Tyson Fury is a defensive genius. He's brilliant. He's one of the best defensive heavyweight fighters we've seen probably since Muhammad Ali. Really clever for a man that size, amazing. Not a big puncher, but he's still a heavyweight, so he's got the knockout punch. So it's going to be a great rematch. Everybody wants to see that too.
You mentioned Deontay Wilder's one-punch power. I think general consensus is he's the number one puncher in the heavyweight division. Where would you rank his power compared to other heavyweights that you've seen in previous years?
His power is interesting because it really seems to come from a big wind-up. And if he can set it up with a jab and land that right hand, he can knock you out with a left hook too. So, there's been a lot of great punchers. I mean, maybe the most deadly puncher of all times in the heavyweight division is a guy that never won the title, and that's, Ernie Shavers, right. Amazing, devastating, but his punches were heavy. George Foreman, another great puncher. His punches were heavy. It wasn't but Deontay, when it's like an American baseball player, when he throws it from the outfield, I mean, you're going to go to sleep. He's an amazing puncher.
Okay, well, Michael Buffer, always a pleasure catching up with you. Very pleased to see you back over in London. I know you've been doing some travelling in Rome last week. Thank you very much for speaking to Boxing Social. Look forward to catching up with you soon.
Good to see you too. Thank you.